This was a case of a mother who was also a grandmother who was senselessly killed by her daughter.
She always screamed, like when she was to fall and stuff, she would always scream. So we found a dismembered body. Do you know what dismembered means? Okay, so we found pieces of her body, pieces like chopped up, like somebody's body was chopped up in bags in the house. I can't say for sure that it's your grandmother. I don't know whose body it is. I don't know who else's body would be in the house.
She calls on me for everything. I don't know whose body it is. I don't know who else's body would be in the house. This is Candace Craig, a 44-year-old woman from Prince George's County, Maryland, who was supposed to be caring for her elderly mother. But when police showed up at that house in June of 2023, what they found in the basement wasn't a missing person. It was a crime scene, and the woman who answered the door was the one who put it there. So let's back up and actually meet these people, because you can't understand what happened in that house without knowing who was living in it and what their lives looked like before everything fell apart. Margaret Craig was a 71-year-old woman living in Hyattsville, Maryland, in Prince George's County, right outside of Washington, D.C. She had lived in that modest house on Hill Road for years, worked hard her whole life, raised her kids, and was trying to enjoy her retirement in peace. She had survived multiple strokes and was dealing with real health problems, mobility issues, and a colostomy bag. Her world had gotten small by that point, mostly those few rooms in that house, phone calls with family, and the people she trusted to take care of her. Family members described her as a generous, loving woman. She was the kind of person who would do anything for the people she cared about, and she proved that by opening her home to her daughter and her grandchildren.
I know she went missing twice last year, and then January she did the same thing. Was there a report for that? No, she came back the third day, but she never said where she was or anything. And I kept on asking, she didn't want to tell me.
Her income came from her pension and Social Security, the money she had earned and saved over a lifetime of working. That's what she was living on. Now her daughter, Candace Craig, was 44 years old and had been living in Margaret's house along with 3 of her own daughters. On paper, Candace was the official caregiver, the person responsible for making sure her mother got her medication, ate properly, and was looked after every day. That was the arrangement. However, Candace wasn't really there to take care of her mother. She was there to drain her. She had access to Margaret's Capital One bank account and had been making unauthorized purchases for months. DoorDash orders, Lyft rides, a pair of collectible sneakers worth $211. And Margaret figured it out. She noticed the strange charges appearing on her account, and she called her bank herself to report it. Margaret flagged those charges as unauthorized, meaning she told the bank someone was using her account without her permission. What nobody knew at the time was that the bank's records would later see 2 women calling about the same account at the same time, one woman approving all the transactions and one woman reporting them as stolen. The thief and the person being robbed were both on the phone with the same bank about the same account, and neither one knew the other was calling. Then, at some point in May of 2023, Margaret stopped calling the bank and decided to handle it face-to-face.
Going to be very difficult. I think that the ME's office will do their best to give us a cause and manner of death. But in this case, which is unlike any case I have ever seen or experienced here in the county, say it's disturbing is an understatement. It's horrifying. The allegations contained in the statement of charges is just heartbreaking.
She confronted Candace directly about the stolen money and told her she was going to call the police. According to the charging documents, that is when Candace attacked her. Now, the third person living in that house you need to know about is Celia Hardy, who was Candace's oldest daughter and Margaret's granddaughter. Celia was 19 years old at the time and had grown up in that house under her mother's roof. Celia had developmental disabilities and learning difficulties that made her especially easy for her mother to control. She didn't have a lot of options in that household and blindly followed what Candace said. Celia had been running on that system her whole life, and it would be put to the most extreme test anyone could imagine on the night of May 23rd. That night, Celia was in the house when she suddenly heard her grandmother scream. When she asked her mother what was happening, Candace told her something had fallen in the basement and told her not to go into Margaret's room. She told Celia that if she went to jail, to look out for her younger sisters. She had just killed her mother, and before that night was even over, she was already briefing her 19-year-old daughter on what to do when she got arrested. On the morning of May 24, 2023, the day after the murder, Candace had already placed Margaret's body inside a blue plastic storage bin in the bedroom and put a trash bag over her head. She had cut up the bloody carpet from the bedroom floor, bagged it up, and thrown it in a dumpster at a nearby IHOP. Now she needed to figure out what to do with the body itself, and she had decided she wasn't going to do it alone.
It's a shame. Very sad. Very sad. And she did not deserve that.
Words cannot express how devastated I was when I heard about this case, how angry I was, how committed my office was to getting justice. And as with any case, it is not easy. There was a tremendous amount of evidence in this case. It took a lot to put everything together. I want to thank the Prince George's County Police Department for their hard work. Detective Taylor was the lead detective. He did a masterful job of collecting evidence and ensuring that we had what we needed to get justice. I also want to thank my ASAs who handled this case. Shauna Coleman, who is in our homicide unit, who you'll hear from shortly, as well as Julia Hall, who is a member of our special victims unit. This case was really a case that crossed unit lines, right? We're talking about a homicide.
When Celia went to check on her grandmother that morning and found the body in that bin, Candace came back and was actually angry that Celia had gone in there. She still didn't explain to her daughter what had really happened, but what she did tell her was that they needed to get rid of the body and destroy any DNA evidence. The options she laid out for her 19-year-old daughter were burning the body, using acid, or chopping it up. And then they went to Home Depot together and bought charcoal, a lighter stick, and a red gas can. They stopped at a gas station on the way home to fill up the can with gasoline. Back at the house, Candace set up a charcoal grill in the backyard, in the wooded area behind the property, and placed portions of Margaret's remains on it to burn. Now, if you're thinking about the neighborhood here, this was a residential area with modest single-family homes close together. It was the kind of place where people can see and smell what their neighbors are doing in the backyard, which is exactly what happened. Neighbors noticed the fire and the smoke, and from where they were standing, it looked like somebody was having a cookout. One of them later described it to reporters. They even had like a little table with one of the umbrellas. They had that out there. He had the grill, and then they had, the charcoal. But what the neighbor was describing as a cookout was Candace trying to burn her mother on that grill. And because the smell of burning flesh is something you cannot just explain away, Candace cooked chicken on the same grill at the same time to cover the odor.
Basic information from. What is your last name?
Craig. Who do you live with in that house? My grandmother, my mother, and my mother's boyfriend. What's his name? How long has he been living in the house with y'all? 2 years now. 2 years? Mm-hmm. So when was the last time you seen your grandmother? On Tuesday, before I left to go to work. And you saw her last around what time was that when you went to work? Was it 11:30 in the morning? Yeah, before I went to work. Was she okay? I had to check on her to let her know I was going to work. Where was she at? She was laying down. In her room? Yeah. Okay. When you said you checked on her, was something wrong with her? No. I guess she was just sleeping. Okay.
So I know that your mother's missing.
Mm-hmm.
What is, kind of fill me into what's going on?
My daughter saw her on Tuesday. She said she was in the bathroom dumping her colostomy bag, and her grandma come out her room, and then she went out the front door. And then when she went out the bathroom, she realized the front door was open to see if she had to leave. But she didn't see her leave, but she knew she heard her.
So Saran saw her Tuesday, May 29th.
Yeah, before she went to work.
Salia could smell the smoke from inside the house, but when she went outside or looked around, there was no food anywhere. The fire eventually spread beyond what Candace could control. Neighbors came over to help put it out and called the fire department, but Candace told them a tire had caught fire. Her neighbors bought the explanation, or at least didn't push back on it, and the fire got put out. The remains that hadn't been fully burned were left outside to cool overnight, and by the next morning, May 25th, Candace and Salia went back out there and brought what was left of Margaret's body back inside the house. Because the grill hadn't finished the job, Candace had gone online and ordered a chainsaw from Amazon, placing the order under Margaret's name. When the chainsaw arrived, Candace took it to the basement and used it to cut her mother's body into pieces. Salia heard the chainsaw running from somewhere else in the house and got physically sick to the point where she threw up. When she eventually saw what her mother had done, Margaret had been cut into pieces on the basement floor. The remains were then packed into multiple plastic trash bags and stored in the basement of the house where the whole family was still living. On June 2, 2023, Margaret's nephew, David Wilson, called for a welfare check after not hearing from her for several days. He had been keeping in regular contact through Facebook Messenger, and when she went quiet, he went to the house himself. He noticed her car was still parked outside, got strange answers from Candace, and saw a large burned area in the woods out back. He called the police. Officers arrived at around 1:35 in the afternoon, and Candace let them in without being asked, which is a bold decision for someone with a basement full of human remains.
It was insulting for this 71-year-old woman who was a hardworking woman, collecting Social Security, collecting a pension. She was someone who worked hard all her life. She was providing for her grown daughter who was living with her grandchildren, and she even allowed her daughter's boyfriend to live in the home. So this is a giving, caring, loving, compassionate, and understanding woman who was killed, who was asphyxiated by her daughter. And make no mistake, Miss Candace Craig absolutely committed this crime, and she is now being held accountable. I also want to thank the family of Margaret Craig. It was tough to sit through 8 days of trial testimony. It was tough to look at the graphic photos of grilled body parts. It was difficult, I think, for them to even imagine how devastating it was for the daughters of Candace Craig to be asked to be a part of the cover-up.
The moment they moved toward the basement, the smell of decomposition reached them before they even got to the bottom of the stairs. They found 3 white plastic trash bags on the floor, one of them open with what appeared to be brain matter visible inside, blood and tissue on the floor, a knife, a chainsaw cover, cutting tools, and cleaning supplies throughout the area. The homicide unit was called immediately. Candace told officers her mother regularly ran away on her own, and this was nothing unusual. Meanwhile, Salia was in a separate room with a different detective, and while sitting there, she pulled up her own Amazon account history. And I looked back on it, and put it on this window here, and saw that I had to go to that chainsaw. Salia found the chainsaw order herself in her own account. She wasn't told by the detective. She discovered it while looking at her own Amazon history and found her grandmother's name on an order placed after her grandmother was dead. Both women were taken into custody the next day, June 3rd. Candace Craig was charged with first-degree and second-degree murder, and Salia was charged as an accessory after the fact. And with that, the whole thing shifted from a family's private nightmare into a courtroom.
At sentencing, and we hope that justice will continue to be in the favor of Miss Margaret Craig and her surviving family members who were innocent in all of this and came to court every single day to just be there to support her and her memory. Again, I have an excellent team of attorneys as well as victim witness coordinators who work hard every day on cases like this. Although we don't have many cases of this nature, but cases where individuals lose their loved ones, and our job is to get justice. And so I want to thank Shauna. She did a masterful job today in her closing, but also in the entire presentation of the trial, along with Julia Hall. They're the best of the best. We have some great prosecutors here in the state's attorney's office. I want them to say a few words.
Did the daughter show any remorse or regret?
She'll answer questions here shortly.
Okay.
She'll answer
Yes.
questions shortly.
I would like for them to
Sorry.
speak briefly. No problem. The family did decline to come out today, and I know that we always want to hear from the family, but sometimes they just need to take it all in. So, Shauna.
Step up to the mic and then identify yourself.
So my name is Shauna Coleman, and I want to say I got onto this case after it started with ASA Jessica Garth, who's the chief of the Special Victims Unit. And I really wanted to be on this case with her because I recently lost my mom, and somehow this case just felt very powerful and personal for me, because going through this, I was able to sort of really think about my mom and how I felt, and it really hit home, that bond between a mother and daughter, and it really guided the way I felt this case needed to be shown to the jury, because I think a lot of us can resonate with that. And to understand how Candace Craig could not only do this to her own mother, but then to accuse her own children of murder, exposing them to potential life in prison, it just, really connecting with my mom and my mom's passing helped me present this case in a way I think that really resonated with everybody, because we all have moms. And so I think that we could all feel that sense of why and how, that just went unanswered.
By the time Candace Craig's trial began on October 24, 2024, more than a year had passed since the arrest. The case was heard in Prince George's County Circuit Court in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, in front of Judge Karen Mason. Candace was facing first-degree murder, second-degree murder, tampering with evidence, and improperly getting rid of a body. It was an 8-day trial, and the prosecution's most important witness was Salia. Salia, then 21 years old, had already pleaded guilty to accessory after the fact and made a deal with prosecutors that required her to tell the full truth on the stand. The jury in Candace Craig's trial has heard graphic testimony about body parts from the medical examiner, but the star witness has been Craig's daughter, Salia. She testified her grandmother caught Craig stealing her money, telling the court, "Grandma said, 'Get out, I'm going to call police,' and that's why she did it." She told of a failed attempt to burn the grandmother's body whole, and how her mother then ordered an electric chainsaw to cut the body to pieces. Then the medical examiner got on the stand. Dr. Pamela Ferreira, and Maryland Assistant Medical Examiner, described the condition of the remains when they arrived at her office in early June of 2023. She called it a unique case, which is the kind of clinical understatement that you only hear from someone who has been doing that job for a long time.
What do you know about her personal life or anything? Like anything going on in the house, that would be issues?
I know she's been stressed and depressed.
With what?
Sister,
Mm-hmm.
he took her money and stuff.
What was her condition when you saw her Monday?
She was quiet all day on Monday. She basically stayed in the room. She didn't really do anything. That was it. She was in the bed. It was quiet. Like the last couple of days, she was just quiet. It was like you can hear her on the phone talking, and then she would just start crying when she gets off the phone, like she was depressed. And I kept on telling her, I said, you need to tell your family how you're feeling. And she didn't want them to know certain things, and she was like quiet.
So where do you think she don't drive, right?
No.
Well, she didn't drive.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think she went?
I have no idea. Normally if she needs to go somewhere, she'll ask me. But I went to the ER the first week of May, so got my spine, so I haven't been driving that much. But normally she'll call her brother-in-law, but they haven't they didn't pick her up that day. And my dad is really not concerned. He's thinking that she's with some man. I said, no, if she was with some man, she would have told me. So I don't think that's the case. But he's like, oh, she'll pop up.
But is that normal for you? Like if you came home and didn't see your grandmother for 3 or 4 days, would you think that was normal or is that abnormal?
No, that's not normal. My mother, she been telling me how she did it before, but I never did that. She did it before.
Okay, but normally you're just seeing her every day when you come home from work or when you're leaving the house.
Yeah.
So you didn't.
Mostly in her room all the time.
Where did your mom say she went?
Oh, she don't know.
So she didn't say she went to a friend's house or anything?
Yeah.
So who reported her missing?
Today, I don't know. I know she went missing twice last year, and then January she did the same thing. And
Was there a report for that?
no, she came back the 3rd day, but she never said who she was or anything. And I kept on asking, she didn't want to tell me. But she came back the 3rd day. I don't know who made the report today. So me and my cousin were supposed to go to the police station today to file a report. So Wednesday, the police came to the house. I think one of my cousins called, so they came to the house and they looked around. And I told them about the history of her being gone, and they was like, well, I will wait out 72 hours to see if she came back. And that's the reason why I was going to file today.
When was the last time you spoke to your mom over the phone?
She texted me Monday to come down and open a bottle of water, but that was about it. And usually when I text her, she never responds, hardly. And when she needs me, she'll come by the step and she'll call my name. And she'll bang on the wall.
Text you on Monday.
No, that's her cell phone. That's the house phone. She'll call me from the house phone if she needs me.
The remains had arrived in 9 plastic bags that were nested inside each other, and along with those bags came the chainsaw, paper towels, and paint cans filled with water that had more fragments inside them. The medical examiner really called this a, quote, unique case simply because the victim in this case, her body was not intact by the time it arrived to the medical examiner. In fact, the medical examiner testified that the body was in 9 bags, be specific, and she said that there was 67 fragments of remains that were examined. Every single one of those 67 pieces showed signs of post-mortem burning from the grill attempt and mechanical cutting consistent with a chainsaw. Because the remains were so badly damaged, Dr. Ferreira could not determine exactly how Margaret died, but she was clear that there was no sign of any natural disease. The official cause of death was ruled homicide by undetermined means. On top of Salia's testimony and the medical examiner's findings, prosecutors also brought in a 46-page financial report put together by University of Maryland students through the Justice for Fraud Victims Project that showed in detail how Candace had been robbing her mother for months.
You know, that bond between a mother and daughter, and it really guided the way I felt this case needed to be shown to the jury, because I think a lot of us can resonate with that. And to understand how Candace Craig could not only do this to her own mother, but then to accuse her own children of murder, exposing them to potential life in prison, it just, you know, really connecting with my mom and my mom's passing helped me present this case in a way I think that really resonated with everybody, because we all have moms. And so I think that we could all feel that sense of why and how, you know, that just went unanswered.
Hi, I'm Julia Hall, another Assistant State's Attorney. I'm in the Special Victims and Family Violence Unit here. I had the honor of joining this case after our chief, Jessica Garth, is on leave currently, so I stepped in late to assist Shauna in the trial. I think we'd be remiss if we did not thank the University of Maryland, the Robert H. Smith School of Business, Justice for Fraud Victims. That's with Samuel Handwerger. The accounting work that they did, they worked with law enforcement, with our office, to put together part of the financial investigation that I think really brought it home for the jurors and helped us prove that premeditation factor that was essential here. So we'd like to thank Mr. Handwerger and his students for all of their work, which was truly essential. And just again, to the police department, did a fantastic job on this. There were about over 600 state's exhibits that were at least marked as evidence, which is a massive number. And so it was a tremendous effort by many individuals to get this done. So thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
The students had gone through 30 hours of bank call recordings, matched withdrawals from Margaret's accounts to deposits into Candace's, and flagged specific purchases made at Home Depot after the murder that matched the supplies used in the disposal attempt, which showed Candace was still spending Margaret's money even after she was dead. The defense team tried their best. They didn't even argue against the tampering and improper disposal charges because there was nothing to argue. Instead, they focused entirely on trying to create doubt about whether Candace was actually the one who killed Margaret. They pointed out that only 10 items from the scene had been tested for DNA, that Margaret's car sitting in the driveway was never tested, and that unidentified male DNA had been found somewhere at the scene. They brought up a live-in boyfriend named Benny, who they described as a drug dealer who was living in the house and supposedly had no knowledge of what happened. This indirectly suggested that he was the actual killer and Candace was protecting him. Their closing argument was literally titled "Reasonable Doubt" in a PowerPoint presentation. The jury went to deliberate and came back in just over 1 hour. On November 1st, 2024, Candace Craig was convicted on every single charge: first-degree murder, second-degree murder, tampering with evidence, and improper disposal of a body. Sentencing came on February 20th, 2025. Judge Karen Mason sentenced Candace Craig to life in prison with no chance of parole.
We are happy to take questions.
Did the daughter show any remorse?
I did not see that. I did not see Ms. Craig show any remorse at all during this trial. Now, my vantage point was from behind, so I'll ask if you all see any emotion.
I didn't hear.
Can you step to the? I'm sorry.
I didn't hear any emotion. I was focused on the jurors themselves, who you could tell really felt this case very deeply, and that the decision that they made really, they felt it in their hearts because many of the jurors were crying. And so I was focused on them more so than Ms. Craig.
But no physical, like the change in facial.
I wasn't looking at her. I didn't hear her.
You mentioned during closing, especially I think the state's attorney, about just the fact that the defense, they were saying it's like a whodunit type of case. What are your thoughts on that? I know state's attorney, you emphasized that it was in fact Ms. Craig that committed this murder. Do you have any response to those claims that they were saying it was a whodunit and whoever did is still out there?
So if I had issue with whodunit, I would not be prosecuting the case. And so I firmly believe in the evidence that I saw, both Ms. Craig's response to police when they were in her home, Ms. Craig's response to police when they interviewed her, but then also the response of her children, who I met with on a number of occasions. And I have no doubt that she is responsible. And if there was any doubt, we wouldn't be here.
In every case, it's going to be a whodunit. But in this case, we had the answer, and it was Margaret Craig. And it was Candace Craig. And it was clear that it was Candace Craig because of her actions before, during, and after the incident.
Prosecutor Shauna Coleman told the court that what happened to Margaret was the kind of thing that only exists in movies and books, and that it was beyond the words she had available to describe it. State's attorney Aisha Bravway said Candace had heartlessly taken her mother's life over a dispute about credit card charges when she should have been taking care of her. And Judge Karen Mason looked at Candace and said, "What we have here is a woman who led a good life and left this world in such a way. And only you know, Miss Craig, exactly what happened here." Salia's sentencing had come a couple of months earlier in December of 2024. Judge Mason gave her time served, which was roughly 550 days she had already spent in county jail since the arrest, plus 5 years of supervised probation. She was also ordered into psychological counseling, vocational training, and assigned a mentor. The court and the prosecutors were both clear about why she got this deal. Her developmental disabilities had made her easy to manipulate. She had played no part in the actual killing, and her testimony is what got Candace convicted. Assistant State's Attorney Shauna Coleman said Salia had shown real bravery and secured justice for her grandmother. Judge Mason closed by telling her to make her life into something Margaret could be proud of. Candace Craig is serving life without parole in the Maryland Department of Corrections, and as of early 2026, no appeal has been filed. Margaret deserved better than what she got, and the least the court could do was make sure the person who did it to her never saw the outside of a prison again. What do you think about this horrifying case? Let me know in the comments section. Also, click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this. See you in the next one.